the president and CEO of State Housing Group Incorporated, here to discuss buying apartments as a group. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Phil George.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. Glad to be here. Before I get started, I just got to tell you something. You guys are very special for being here, because I met a young man maybe 15 or 20 years ago, and if any of you guys have children and you have them in church, it's very difficult to keep them still, right? You're pinching them, you're saying, hey, you know, whatever. Hard to get them to do that. But this young man was not only in church, he was leading the youth ministry. So if you know Pastor David, just give yourself a round of applause. So what I'm going to talk about is buying apartment buildings. I'm not talking about duplexes. I'm not talking about fourplexes. I'm talking about 20, 30, 40, 100, 200 unit buildings. And you're probably saying to yourself, where am I going to get the money to do that? I'm going to tell you. I don't have a whole lot of time, so this is going to be a 10,000 foot level look at buying apartment buildings, okay? So buying apartment buildings as a group. It's a group activity. Okay, so quick disclaimer, whenever you guys make decisions on investments, finances, taxes, always have someone look over it, someone you trust, okay? So I just make that quick disclaimer. It's not me, guys. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Phil Georges. I come from Haiti. I got here when I was 3 years old. Grew up in New York City, had a regular, normal life, poor, but didn't know it. But we were rich, with family, with love, and all that. But financially poor. I had a high school teacher named Miss Kelty. I never forget to mention her, because she's gone now. But when we were in high school, she asked me, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, I don't want to be anything. I just want to have money and live my life. And she said, good luck with that, Mr. Georges. And I said, okay. And by the time I was able to do that, she was already gone, so I could never tell her. So that's why I always keep her in my presentations. I went on to college, got a degree in microbiology. Then I saw an infomercial. That's what they had back then, infomercials. It said, be rich in real estate. I said, I could do that, be rich in real estate. So I went to the weekend course, and I turned around and bought a 6-family a few months later, not knowing a thing, okay? And if you guys are thinking about 1985, you're trying to figure out how old I was back then, this thing's not clicking quick. Oh, click back. I was 5. I'm going the wrong way here. That was my first purchase right there, that building right there. And I'll tell you real quickly about it. I paid $27,000 for a 6-family house. Yeah, times have changed, ain't it? But I paid $27,000 for that 6-family house, not knowing a thing about real estate other than a weekend course. I went and got contractors, and they told me, I'm clicking too quick here. They told me there was going to be $150,000 to fix it. And I was like, yeah, okay. And many of them told me that. Then the last guy came and said, young man, you got a problem. I said, what's the problem? He said, well, it's going to be $150,000 to fix this property. And I said, yeah, that's what everybody told me. He said, no, that's not your problem, son. He said, it ain't going to be worth that when I finish fixing it. You see, so I had no education. The property was going to be worth $125 after buying it for $27, putting $150 in. So what did I do as a young 24-year-old? That was the real age. At the time, I walked away. I let it go and said, I can't afford this. That building became a park. So you see the vacant lot there? So anybody who's in Brooklyn and enjoying that park, I have a history with it. But in any case, I moved on. I had a degree in microbiology, so I was working for the lab. Then I became a commercial real estate broker. Couldn't sell any commercial property, very difficult. So I went back to corporate America, and I studied real estate by night and weekends. I did everything I could. I was studying like a crazy person. There was no YouTube. There was no podcast back then. There was no mentors. I just was studying on my own, and I figured it out. I did all of these things. I bought property, I buy and hold, I fix and flipped, I wholesaled, I did residential leases, commercial leases. I bought properties, tax certificates, courthouse, you name it. I did it because I was serious about making money in real estate. You see, because growing up in New York City, there's nothing but big buildings around. And I kept looking and saying, somebody's getting paid on these big properties. It should be me, right? So I kept at it. In any case, there's two kinds of people. You're either going to have a rich mindset or a poor mindset. You see, if you have a rich mindset, you're willing to spend money on education. You're willing to learn. You're willing to do what it takes. But when you got a poor mindset, you wouldn't spend $100. Would you say 70 to make 25 to make 70? You won't do it because you got a poor mindset. But when you got a rich mindset, you're going to spend whatever it takes to learn. This is my bookshelf at home. Over $100,000 in counting in education. I keep learning. I learn something new all the time. When you stop learning, you stop earning. So I'm always learning. I used to be that guy that they said real estate course. I was like, where? Where's the real estate course? Took every last one I could. But the problem with that is I was doing too many things. You know the shiny ball syndrome? You're trying to do this side hustle, you're doing that side hustle. None of them ever pan out. You know why? Anybody know why? You're lacking focus. You're lacking focus. I like to refer to focus as following one course until successful. You see, if you put all them side hustles down and focus on one, that thing is going to make you money. Because everything you do, if you put enough effort and education into it, can make money. So that's what it's about, focus. Get to that bag by focusing. So what should you learn if you want to get into multifamily? Multifamily is a serious business. This is not a game. This is not a side hustle. This is not a get-rich-quick thing. This is a serious thing. So you should learn why multifamily versus single family. How to get in the game. How to speak the language, because it's a whole nother language out here. Okay, there's a lot of different terminologies. It's a whole lot to learn. You got to learn how to build a team. You have to learn how to analyze the numbers, because the numbers is what drives commercial real estate. And anything above 5 families is considered commercial. Okay, so you have to learn how to analyze the numbers. Then you have to learn all the steps to close the deal. So what's the difference between multifamily or commercial versus single family? A lot of people fix and flip, buy and hold. They do one at a time, this and that. It's the economies of scale. It's forced appreciation. For example, in single family, you have comps. Property is worth X. The property next door is worth approximately the same. The property down the block worth approximately the same, because these are comps, right? Competitive sales. But in commercial real estate or in multifamily real estate, you have something called forced appreciation. So you can buy a property for a price, and you can force it to be worth more if you do the right things. And I said this is 10,000 view level, so I can't go into all of this, but You have to manage vacancies, you have management efficiencies, you can improve the tenant base, and you build up a lot of equity when you have large multifamily. So how do you get in the game? The way I got in the game is I built up my portfolio one at a time, okay? That takes a long time. It took me years and years to get that portfolio I have now. Or you can do it a different way, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. You could be a deal finder. You can also be a capital raiser. You can also get into multifamily as a passive investor. You might have some money sitting in a 401k making very little return. You can self-direct that money into a multifamily property. And one of the best ways, and I'm biased when I say this, is to get a mentor. Because I could have avoided all the mistakes I made if I would have had a mentor back then. You know, that's spending money to make money by having a mentor. So, multifamily compared to single family. If you have a single family property and you have a problem, that money comes out of that one tenant's rent. So if you got a new roof, new AC, new plumbing, maintenance, all of that comes out of that one tenant's situation. But when you have multifamily, you divide that across 20, 30, 40 tenants. For example, if you have a vacancy in a single family that you own, it's empty 1 month when they move out, you have 100% vacancy. If I've got a 10 family and I got one vacancy, what percentage of vacancy do I have? 10%. Do I still got enough to put in my pocket? Do I still have enough to pay the mortgage? Do I still have enough to fix things? Of course, because I only have 10% vacancy. But when you got one and somebody moves out, you get nervous because next month, that payment coming out of Hip National Bank, okay? So let me give you a quick comparison. The numbers might be a little skewed depending on market. If you have a single-family house and it costs $150, I know it don't cost that no more, but if you had one that costs $150, you'd put $40,000 down. You'd have a balance of $110 to pay off to the bank. You'd have an NOI, and that's a terminology that you'd have to learn if you got into multifamily. NOI stands for net operating income. That's what's left, okay? So you'd have debt. So you pay the debt, that's the mortgage, and you'd have a cash flow of $4,500. Same thing, same scenario on 35 units. You pay $3.5 million. You put $1 million down. You guys saying, whoa, I ain't got $1 million to put down? Remember, this is buying as a group. Okay, so I'll get into it. You put $1 million down, you have a balance of 2.4, it would give you an NOI of 189. You'd make payments of interest only of $127,000. It leaves you $61,000. Now, here's where the forced appreciation part comes in. How many of you guys had your rent increased in the past couple of years? Okay. So if your rent was increased, what happens in multifamily, you raise the rent. You go in, you buy the property, you make repairs, you put new kitchens in, new floors, you fix the property up, and then you raise the rent. Okay, so in this scenario, 35 units, if you bought it for $3.5 million, you'd have 35 tenants paying roughly $1,000. You have a vacancy factor of 10%, which would be $42,000 a year of vacant money that you never see. And then you have effective gross income of $378,000. You have 50% in expenses. That would leave you $189. And in multifamily, we have something called a cap rate, and that's how you determine the price. You take that cap rate, and it would equal that $3.5 million. But now you went in, you did some fix-up, you raised the rent by $350. That brings you to a new new income, and it also, you go in and you improve the management. By improving the management, now you've got it down to 5%, which is $28,000. You've got a new effective gross income of 500 and change, and your management is down to 48%. You'd have 279 left over. What you've done is you've increased, in the course of maybe 2 to 3 to 5 years, the value of that property by $1.6 million. Who wants $1.6 million in their bank account? Oh, the rest of y'all don't. Okay. A few of y'all do. So if you had a single family and it went up 5% a year, and I'm not talking about the last couple of years where property values doubled. In normal circumstances, properties go up about 5% a year. So when we get back to that, that would have moved up by $35,000 a single family. However, the multifamily, by increasing the rent by $350, lowering the expenses by 2%, you'd have an increased NOI of $279, which brings that value to $5.1 million, an increase of $1.6 million, okay? Now, here's the part about buying it as a group. Multifamily is a team sport. You don't do it by yourself unless you did it the hard way like I did and, take years and years and years and years to do it. But if you want to get it quickly, in about 5 years, you can leave the day job. You can leave the W-2 behind. It takes about that long. But once you get there, you're really living. Does anyone have any idea besides sports what these teams have in common? Anybody? What do you think they have in common? I can't hear you. Oh, well, this thing was supposed to go. He's paying attention, y'all. He's paying attention. The rest of y'all wasn't paying attention. In any case, the two teams up top are from Brooklyn, my home city. But the other two were purchased by a team of investors led by Magic Johnson, the Washington Commanders and the Dodgers. Do y'all think that Magic Johnson just stroked a check for $1 billion? He had a team of investors to buy those teams. And that's what you do in multifamily. So those big buildings that you see, there's not one person owning it, it's a collective. And when you get that collective together, that's when the big money comes in. So syndication is what it's called. You syndicate a deal. And syndication basically is getting a group of investors together to buy big assets. It's similar to a partnership. It has some similarities, but it is very different in the sense that you need an attorney because you're turning a property into shares. So you're selling shares of the property, okay? Some terms in syndication, you have a syndicator. That's the guy who runs the show more or less. And then you have key principals, you have a lead sponsor, they're all the same, and you direct that asset. That person is the one that's directing the asset. And you have passive investors. That's where you go out and get people who say, hey, my money's sitting in the 401k, it's not making a whole lot. Let me put it into this multifamily. And they become a passive investor. They get a quarterly check from you just for investing in your properties. Kind of like buying stock. And those passive investors are who puts up the down payment for you. You see, that's the part where that $1 million doesn't come out of my pocket. It comes out of the investor's pocket. So what's in it for the investor? They get to be passive, which means they don't have to do anything but give you the money and wait for checks to come in the mail. They get a high yield on a safe investment because everyone needs a place to live, right? Everyone needs a place to live. So typically an investor will get anywhere from 5 to 10% return on their money. If you got your money in the bank, you know you're not getting nowhere near that right now. You get equity, which normally, if they make an investment, they get anywhere from 50 to 90%, and the syndicator keeps the balance, and they get equity in the deal, tax write-offs, etc. So the question is, how does a syndicator make money? One, they find a great deal. Secondly, they get a syndication attorney. If you see it's in red for a reason. Because if you try to syndicate a deal without a syndication attorney, you're going to have a home on 33rd Street. Personally, I don't look good in orange, so I wouldn't try that. But they make a prospectus. That prospectus goes out to investors. You raise the money, that $1 million we talked about. You close on the property. You force the appreciation, and then you sell the property within 3 to 5 years. And that's how that $1 million check comes. So what would it look like? On that particular deal I talked about, you'd get an acquisition fee. You get paid to buy the property. Hear what I'm saying? You get paid. And in this scenario, you'd get $350,000. You get paid to manage the manager. That's called an asset manager. You get 2% of the rent. And then when you sell it for the 5.1 that I talked about, you have closing costs of about $200,000. You have a 70-30 split with the investors who gave you the down payment. They get the 70%. You get the 30%. And what that looks like is they would get $1 million, and you'd get $440,000 for your efforts, tax write-offs, etc. Now, if you had a team, because you need a team, this is a team sport, and you had 5 members on your team, you'd get $88,000. They did 2 deals a year, $177,000. Now, the beauty of this, you could refinance the property if it makes enough money, and then you keep it. And then all that money's yours. You're not splitting it with an investor anymore. So these are just a few properties. Like I said, I'm going real quickly that I personally own without investors. This is the 50-some-odd unit out in Titusville. And I think Pastor David heard I owned a block. Yeah, I own a block, an entire block. That's mine. Okay? But I did it the hard way, like I said. It took me years and years of buying and scaling up and scaling up. I played Monopoly in real life. You guys play Monopoly? You sell 4 of these, you get one of those on Park Place. That's what I did. That's how I ended up owning the whole block. So basically, how do you get in this? You can build a portfolio ground up like I did and take years and years. You can get a partner, speed it up a little bit. You can listen to podcasts and YouTube and figure it out. Or you can get a mentor. Okay? Whether it's me or someone else, you should get a mentor to speed this up. Because they'll teach you how to learn the language, how to find the deals. Has anybody ever seen a 50-unit property with a for sale sign on it, ever? You know why? Because properties like that are traded without anyone ever knowing. You see, they call people like myself and say, hey, Phil, are you interested in this 50-unit? No? Okay. And they call and they keep calling until they find one of their buyers who will buy that property. So you have to know how to find the property. You have to know how to analyze the property. Now, I made it sound real simple in this short presentation, but there's a lot of numbers that you have to figure out. And then you hire a manager, because you're not managing this. You don't want no phone calls on Saturday night that the toilet's stuffed up. So you're going to hire a manager, but then you're going to become what they call an asset manager. You will manage that manager and make sure the manager is doing what they're supposed to do with that property. Because making this large investment, they have to make things work on time. They have to fill vacancies as quickly as possible. So these are some of the things an asset manager has to do. Make sure the spending is correct, review the numbers. So it's a lot involved. So there's many different ways you can get a hold of me. You can take a picture of the QR code. You can go old school and email me and put Pastor David in the subject line. You can go to my website, multifamilygraduate.com. You can go to my LinkedIn page, my Facebook page, or you can call me. All of them work. I made it easy for you. But the bottom line is, if you want to get into multifamily, it's a very serious business, and that's my time. Thank you. Okay, sure.
I'm going to ask a couple simple questions, and then we're going to move to this. So, the question is, I got 4 friends.
You got what?
4 friends, hypothetical.
Uh-huh.
We got 20,000, 50,000, and both of them got 100,000.
Mm-hmm.
What would be your first few steps?
Okay, so you got 4 investors, and you got a certain amount of money.
Yep.
I would probably do a joint venture, that's a partnership, to buy whatever that money can afford to put a down payment on. Okay, that would be the first step. You know, if you're trying to get bigger like the numbers I'm talking about, that requires education. You know, that's not just 4 guys got money.
So here's a question I would ask for those that are here. So like, okay, I may not be able to do a syndicate deal. What markets would you say are good markets to start in? Maybe Orlando's priced me out.
Florida, period, is a very good market. The problem with Florida right now is insurance. It's making the values on properties much lower than they are. Now, multifamily, it's income-driven, period. So it's how much money it makes. So when I'm comparing apples to apples, it's not the comps that you do house to house. It's income to income. So I might have a 50 unit that has X amount of income, and I have a 50 unit right across the street, and it has a different income. It has a different value. So based on those things, that's where, you know, that depends on the market you're gonna go in. So without giving a whole lot of market information, Florida's a great market. Right now, it's kind of on a stay still. You got a lot of states where Ohio, Kentucky, Oklahoma, those states are very good for tax reasons and the fact that the prices are going up because rents are going up in those places.
Last question. So you talked about how you got started in the process of buying commercial real estate and buying apartments and finding syndications. Where would people need to go? Where do you hang around to meet these individuals that have the money? You grew up in New York, didn't have the resources, didn't grow up rich. Where did you go hang around to get the network so that you can increase your net worth?
Networking is an everyday process, okay? Believe it or not, I know plenty of people with big money. But every last one of you guys know people with money, but they don't know that you need to know that.
That's good.
Okay? You know them, they got big money, but you don't know, you don't have a reason for them to invest with you at the moment, right? So what you do in multifamily as far as networking, you go to events where you know high income people will be, but beyond that, when I go to the grocery store, I'm talking to that clerk. The clerk may not have the money I'm talking about, but she might be the owner's daughter. And she connects me to the owner and he has the money. Or I'm somewhere else and I'm talking to someone and they don't look like they got money because I'm judging by a book by its cover, right? But if you talk to them right, you'll be surprised at people. I met this young man at a networking event. He was 24 years old, and he came for the multifamily experience. It was a multifamily thing. And he said to me, man, what am I going to do with this money I just got? I'm like, how much money you got? He said, well, my grandfather just died and left me $1.4 million.
I need my
He's
grandfather
24. Jeans and a hat turned backwards.
I need my grandfather to die.
Jesus. But we're talking, you know what I'm saying? Generational wealth. What is that, Proverbs 13 and 22? Leave an inheritance to your children's children. My kids ain't get nothing. They kids gonna get it. They gotta go build.
Clap it up for Phil George. He'll be back later on for a panel. Thank you so much.